Hello, everybody. In the next 4 minutes, I'd like to talk to you about agendas, which I'm aware it might be the least interesting sentence I've ever said, but actually I've noticed in the virtual environment, the online meeting environment, that agendas at the beginning can really make a difference, quite a significant difference, to the success of that meeting. Now, there are two kinds of agendas. There's the sort of the classic, the sort of agenda that you would expect at the beginning of a meeting, and that's the hello everybody, thanks for coming today. We're going to talk about point one, and then point two, and then point three, and then next action steps. That's the kind of classic agenda. But today I'd like to talk about a slightly more interesting and not so obvious kind of agenda, which is what I call a behavioral agenda. Now, a behavioral agenda is you set out very near the beginning of the meeting how you would like the audience to behave. You tell them very specifically how you'd like them to behave and how you're going to behave. And this has a couple of benefits. First of all, it helps your audience feel secure and safe, and therefore they relax. Because it's quite frustrating in the online environment at the moment. We don't often know, are we allowed to speak? Do we have to stay on mute? Are we allowed to use the chat bar? How do we ask questions? It can make people feel a little bit uncertain. And that's frustrating, and it's easier for them to tune out of your message. If people are feeling safe and secure and they relax, they're more likely to listen to your message. They're more likely to be persuaded by your message. So let me give you a couple of examples. So for instance, if you were running something like, let's say, a sales presentation or something like that, you might say, hi everybody, thanks for taking the time to come to my presentation today. What I'd like to do is I'm going to set out point one today of this project. That's going to be about 8 or 9 minutes, and then I'll stop and I'll take any questions about that section. Once I've answered your questions, we'll then move on to point two of this project, and that's a bit more about logistics and rolling it out. That's going to be about 5 or 6 minutes, and then I'll take some more questions at that point. And finally, we'll look at part three, which is the funding, how we're going to get the money for this. And then at the end of that, I'll take your final questions as well. I'm very happy to keep this conversational as we go. So that's one kind of behavioral agenda. You're telling the audience, here's how I'd like it to go. I'm going to speak, then you can speak, then I'm going to speak, then you can speak. And your audience will relax and they'll sort of believe you more. They'll be able to buy into your message more if you do that. Now, of course, that's not the only way of running a meeting. You might be the kind of person who prefers to keep all the questions to the end. And then you'd say something like, hi, everybody, thanks for coming today. I've got a few things I'd like to get through in the time that we've got in a certain order. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to get through my presentation. At the end of my presentation, I'll take any questions that you have. So that's another way of structuring the questions. Now, of course, there are all sorts of other ways of telling people how you'd like them to behave, as long as you're sort of training them at the beginning of the meeting. So you might instruct them they can use the chat bar, when they can take themselves off mute and when they have to mute themselves, how to use reactions depending on the software that you're using, should they put their hand up if they want to ask a question. You can go through all these sort of housekeeping rules. They're the sort of digital equivalent, really, of telling everybody at the beginning of a meeting where the fire exits are. You know, they're over the wing and they're at the back. And if you were having a meeting on a plane, I don't know why I used that example. Anyway, you get the idea, I think. Give people a behavioral agenda at the beginning. Tell them, I'm just checking my watch, my clock. We've got 25 seconds left. Tell them how you'd like them to behave. Tell them how you're going to behave, and it will make the meeting much more successful for both of you. They'll feel safe. They'll be able to relax. They'll listen to you more. They'll believe you more, and they will be more persuaded by your message. I hope that's a useful idea for you. Get in touch if you have any queries, and we are 4 seconds early, so have a very lovely rest of the day.